Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. Can you talk to me about how the story came about in your brain and the process of writing this book? Because it's so good.
There's a Wu-Tang side project from the GZA called Liquid Swords, which is like a gangster rap record from the 90s that opens up with a little boy talking about how when his father used to be the Shogun's executioner, but now they were on the run together. And I love that album. And so I listened to this little kid tell this story hundreds of times and eventually found out that was the opening dialogue from a movie called Shogun Assassin. And then I learned that Shogun Assassin was based on this series of manga from Japan called Lone Wolf and Cub about a powerful warrior who was on the run with his child, and they were fighting together on the road to death. And I was working in television and I'd been writing short crime stories. And then somewhere I had the idea of what if I took Lone Wolf and Cub and told it in the world of like white trash and Nazi punk criminals. And so I started writing it. I was working for the TV show called The Mentalist when I started writing it. And then I went over and I worked on it while I was on a TV show called Gotham, partially as an escape from network television and kind of the rules of network television that won't let you be nearly as nasty as I wanted to be. And so I would go have the adventures of Nate and Polly while, working on my day job of doing like Case the Week network television. And that was really good for me. And it really helped me find what I wanted to do as opposed to like what my day job was, which those were great jobs, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, And so, and the other like big story to tell from the writing of this novel was the first draft of it. And it's had so many different titles, so many. I have files where the title is Greenlight. I have files where the title is Born Down. For a long time, the title was If All Roads Were Blind. That's the title I sold it under, which is a quote from a Bonnie Parker poem of the Bonnie Parker, Bonnie and Clyde, which is a little too literary a title. And so, the editors wanted me to change the title. And I agreed that title's a little clunky. And it was in the era when a lot of books were being called like The Girl on the Train or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And so they were really pushing for a girl title. And I didn't want to chase a trend. So I didn't want to just have the word girl in it, but I was like, okay, girl, it is Polly's story. She rides shotgun. And it just came to me. And I'm very happy with that title. It's maybe my favorite title of any of my books. And so, yeah, it's a long trip just for the book alone, much less the movie.
So can you talk about how you translated this into an adaptation, how it worked, how they came to you, and if there were any specific scenes that you were like, listen, I worked my heart and soul on this. This has to be in.
No, that's interesting. Because I'm in television and I have agents and all that already in place, the transition from book to film was a lot smoother for me than I think it would have been for other people. It did go through a couple of different production companies. Make Ready is not the first. So it's been a long journey. I actually sold the rights for the film before the book was published. And, I wrote the early drafts. I do want to shout out that, Ben and Luke are the other credited screenwriters, and they're the ones who took it over the finish line. And I think my adaptations were too faithful to the book, which is a classic letting the author adapt himself mistake. I am fine with both what I did and what they did. When I met with Ben and Luke, because it was a very like friendly handover, I said, to me, the thing that had to be kept was the bear.
Which is a great scene and important thread throughout the whole thing.
Yes. And to me, that like that's the thing that separates Polly from a lot of other people is like almost a tulpa to me. Like the bear in the book is almost a tulpa. And the movie, obviously, they reduce that part of it, but they keep the scene that to me is like the most important part, which is her sacrificing the bear. And that to me is like the most important scene in the book. It's my favorite scene. It's the scene I wrote first. I wrote this book out of order. So I really wanted that part in. And I knew that there were other things they would keep that they would just keep. I didn't have to say. But to me, like, the bear was really the thing that I like. It's also, from my own perspective, what makes the book feel original and different is that it's this incredibly dark, gritty, violent story that also can make you cry about a teddy bear. And that's a pretty good encapsulation of what I'm trying to do as an author. So I'm very proud of that stuff. And I think the finished product is, fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the film itself, they did such a great job because one of the first times they really connect as father and daughter is over the bear when he's trying to get her to but when they have that scene in the hotel and he's trying to get her to learn, she doesn't know this at the time, but trying to learn how to defend herself. Yeah. And she's not really getting angry until he's like, what if someone takes your bear? And lifts it up. And that's kind of like the beginning of what forms their, close bond during this time period.
No, exactly. And again, this is why I'm glad that, Ben and Luke came in is to find like ways to tell the story that I would never think of, because the grooves in my head about the story are so deep because I spent so many years on this project. It's very hard for a person to dig out those grooves, to form new roads when there's already a road there. And it's much easier when you're adapting someone else to do that. And that's why adaptation is a good thing for the author to observe, I think, from a distance.
So I want to ask you another kind of two-part question. I was curious if there was anything in the film, because I know they made some changes. There's some scenes that are longer. I wanted to know if there was anything in the film that you were like, oh man, I wish I had written that in. And then what you're also most excited about, because this film is such a great adaptation. And it pulls you in right away, just like the book did. I love the book so much. I think fans are going to be so excited. So I want to know what you're most excited about for fans of the book to see.
Those are both really good questions. And why I'm gazing off into the distance is because there is something they did in the movie, and I thought, oh, I should have done that. And now I can't think of what it is. If I think of it, I will say it, because there was something where it's like, oh, that's neater. Like, that's just like a cleaner.
I totally get it. Because as a writer, I'll write something and I'm like, this is great. And like, you feel so good about it and you give it, and then someone else does something. You're like, oh, shoot. Like, why didn't I put that together?
Yeah, I think it might be that, I missed some of Charlotte's journey in the movie, but I do think like the tying Charlotte in to Nick was like a really good idea. It was a good way of getting a lot of the backstory that's very hard to get, very easy to get in a book and very hard to get in a movie. I thought all of that was done very, very well. And I think that at that point, I was kind of clicking with, it's sort of where the movie starts to depart from the book. And I was feeling like, oh, these are good, smart changes. I just think, that to answer the saying about what I'm excited for fans to see, it's kind of both things. Like, I love that they got the scene of taking the bullet, treating the bullet wound. That's a big scene for me. The story she tells about pretending to be Jewish is a true story from when I was like 7 years old. And literally the teacher called my mom and said, I didn't know you were Jewish. And my mom said, neither did I. So I love that stuff is in there. That again, like to me, even if like the gas station robbery isn't something that comes directly from the book, I think it has the exact spirit of the book, which is this like action that is so much closer to violence than it is action. These like really visceral things, because that's how I try to write. I think that is very well done in the movie. And I also think pairing that with these characters that have so much going on under the surface, because I'm always trying to do both things. I'm always trying to tell exciting stories that have heart. I don't believe in like these bifurcations between popcorn movies and indie movies or any of that. I don't believe in any of it. I don't want there to be divisions. All of my favorite stuff are stuff that does both. Do you know what I mean? And so that's where I live. And so I think that's really what I think fans of the book are going to respond to. And also, by the way, I haven't said it yet, so let's say Taron and Sophie are amazing in this movie. And I think particularly, I mean, Taron is great, but he's already fancy. He doesn't need the applause. That like Sophie is this like undiscovered, like giant talent that this movie has discovered. And I mean, I knew from the beginning, from the moment this was going to be turned into a movie, that if you don't have Polly, this movie falls apart. If this is not a brilliant actress, this movie falls apart. And they went out and they found a brilliant actress. And that to me is like the most exciting thing, because if you don't have it, it doesn't work. Like it just literally won't work. And I think, that, and then watching their relationship form, which is, again, I think the pleasure of this story is watching a real human story taking place on this backdrop of absolute violent insanity. And that's the fun for me,
I like laughing because how you're describing this is so how I read it. And you do such a great balance between these beautiful moments where you feel upset, happy in such an intense situation. And I think people don't do it as often because it's hard. And I don't know, you just do it so seamlessly. It's so good. So I'm just laughing hearing your brain, because I'm like, how does he think of these things? But you just do such a great job. When you write, I know you picture kind of your own Polly, your own, like, your own characters. So how did that translate for you when you saw who they picked? And I mean, the acting, like kind of how you said, I'm kind of piggybacking, but this film doesn't work if they didn't work. And they work so well that you're just so invested in the first 10 minutes. I mean, even when you just see, your feeling is a little like off kilter when you first meet kind of Taron's character, right? Coming out of the car, and like you're a little off kilter because you're like, what is this guy doing? Who is he? But then as you keep going, you really get attached to them. And I mean, the performances by everyone in this film are like Oscar-worthy performances, in my opinion. So what was that like for you to see them come alive?
I mean, it's very hard to describe without you just using a word like surreal, or it's dreamlike. It's very hard to explain the feeling of having that idea about Lone Wolf and Cub set in the high desert, back in 2012, and then to be sitting in a movie theater with a giant, title card that says She Rides Shotgun. It feels unreal. And I will say that Sophia to me looks pretty much, that's Polly. I think that they just got that one completely correct. And not that they didn't get Taryn correct, but here's what I'll say. I didn't picture a guy that pretty. And no diss. He's great and he sells it and he is scary and he is raw and real. And that is where I'll just say, go for the best actor, especially if they're pretty. Like, he totally captures it. I pictured a guy that I'm more maybe like a Robert Mitchum.
Like a grittier type of look.
Yeah, but
he was in prison. He had done things. So like that's what you were picturing.
Yes, and again, like, but I'm saying like, but when they said him, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, because he's a good actor, and that I have worked in Hollywood for a long time, and I have learned that you don't cast based on looks, you cast based on a good actor. A good actor will get you there, and Taryn gets you there. He, like you said, he comes out of the car, and you're not thinking, oh, well, that's Taron Egerton. The idea that again that he played Elton John, that just shows that he has.
It's like not even in your brain.
That's what I mean. It's like watching Gary Oldman in the 90s. This guy was Lee Harvey Oswald last week. He's Dracula this week. You don't carry it with you. And I think he pulls it off completely. I think, again, the first scene of violence that he does, with the guy who visits the house is so shocking and raw and surprised me, the author of the book, in how well they pulled off that feeling. And he is so believable in those moments. So yeah, I just think they're both just spectacular, and everybody else is too. I think John Carroll Lynch is terrifying in this movie, and there's a lot of really great performances.
So I want to ask you another question. I know a lot of times when people buy rights to books, it falls through, it happens, all the great things. Now it's getting made, the script's done. Some writers are able to go to set, some aren't. Were you able to go to set? Were you involved in any of that process, or were you more like, I give them the freedom, you have my material?
I was invited to set, and I hate to say this is so depressing. I was caught up in a really bad job that had swallowed my life, and I thought I was going to get to go, and then I realized I personally had missed the window, that I had totally, the error was on my end. A little heartbroken about that. I wasn't a producer on this film, so I wasn't like involved in the nuts and bolts, but they did reach out to me, and like I said, I talked to Nick, I talked to Taryn before they started filming, and I am very sad that I didn't get to go to set, but that's entirely on me. I will never make that mistake again, I can tell you. And I've gotten to see them since. I got to see at a screening last week and actually talk in person with both Nick and Taryn and meet Sophie, and it's pretty incredible. Yeah, I wish I'd gone to set, but I didn't get to. Okay.
Yeah, and then just to end really kind of like on a super positive note, I always like to, what was something for you, there's so many themes in this book. There's so many takeaways from the book that translate into the film. So is there a specific takeaway that would just be mind-blowing to you that people walk away from after seeing it?
I will give you two. The first one is I hope they walk out of the theater saying, I really need to buy this book. And the second one, I think alongside like all the themes of love, is something that I wrote, that Nate teaches to Polly, which is like, that you have to feel weak to get strong. I think that is like a really important idea. If I can call something I came up with important, I love that idea that what you're watching is somebody, when you push yourself all the way out there, you can do really incredible things, but you're not going to feel strong when you're doing them, because if you feel strong, you're not pushing yourself enough.
I want to thank you so much. Like I said, I would nerd out and literally go chapter by chapter with you. I have notes in my book. It is read, it is loved. I have a second copy that I haven't touched. That's like nicely in my bookcase. So
nice,
I'm a huge fan of yours. I was like, no expectations, watch the film. And I was happily surprised with how great the adaptation was and what they did with it, how great the actors were, and just congratulations. I could not be happier for you that this was finally made into a film and that it's so good. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you just said. I'm really glad you enjoy the book. And I'm also, because again, I have such a weird perspective. It's so nice to hear what people who've read the book think of it, because I have such a weird perspective. So I am curious. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for listening to Silence on Set podcast. My name is Monica Gleberman. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more interviews to come.